Hi, good evening. We are Jorge Carrillo and Bertha Vallejo, who are presenting a paper on COVID-19 and industrial resilience in the Global South, the case of study of the auto parts sector in Mexico. I want to share my screen. So this is the title, and also Redi Gomis is part is one of the co-authors, but is unfortunately not here today. We have a main goal of this paper, and it's focused on two important phenomena. The first one is the structural trend, the adoption of Industry 4.0 and their corresponding technologies. And the second one is the disruptive phenomena, the COVID-19 pandemic and their impact in the organization of firms. This study tried to answer a difficult question. What's the impact of COVID-19 on the adoption of 1.40 technologies? So is there any relations in terms of this trend that has been affected by the COVID? So does the auto part firms have sought or accelerate digital solutions? In order to contribute to answer this question, we select the auto part sector in Mexico. The methodology is quite unusual because we mix two different studies for this paper. The first one is an independent, the two of them are independent surveys. The first one is a survey that addresses the level of knowledge and adoption of Industry 4.0 among auto part firms in 2019, just before the pandemic. The survey interviewed engineers in 163 firms from all manufacturing sectors. 17 of them, that firms, were auto parts, and 49 manufacturing and support activities. This is an online survey conducted in Baja California, which is a northern state in Mexico, and it's addressed the manufacturing firm, as I mentioned. In this region, is located Toyota, several suppliers, and the aftermarket firms as well. This survey was coordinated by Access. This is a private consultancy firm that we are working together in many other projects. Although this survey is located in one state and have a relatively few answers, this survey has a very specific and is very rich in terms of adoption and adaptation of 20 technologies related with Industry 4.0. The second survey explores the mitigation and resilience strategies adopted by firms in the sector during the pandemic first months. This survey was designed and implemented by GEDI. GEDI is an inter-organizational research group that we are part of it. This survey was conducted in September 2020 and addressing the impact of COVID and has on the firms. We have almost 1,700 manufacturing firm response. We select the firms from two mega regions, the Norte, which covered the 6 Mexican states, the border states with USA, and the Vallejo, which includes 5 states in the central region of Mexico. These two mega regions cover the majority of the geography of automotive sector in Mexico. The paper will include 40 automotive first-tier suppliers and 132 manufacturing support activities. We call the acronym MSA. The last comment. This segment, OEM, first and second global suppliers, and manufacturer support activities such as plastic injection, metal mechanics, software, etc., are crucial in order to understand the dynamism of the ecosystem. In fact, this is more than an automotive ecosystem. This is an industrial hubs, which includes and coexist very different key industries. Now I shall now give the floor to my colleague Bertha for present the results of these papers.
Good afternoon. My name is Bertha Vallejo, and I'm going to present the results of our study. The first table that we are observing now in the screen, it shows the levels of knowledge and adoption of the Industry 4.0 technologies in both the auto parts sectors and those firms that were providing manufacturing service activities. We have a set of 19 Industry 4.0 technologies, and we based on the survey, we identified how much of these technologies are known by the engineers of the production departments of these firms. So we find out that the level of knowledge is very low, generally speaking. In the auto part firms, about 71% have a low level of understanding of these technologies. This is a little bit less, 60% in the MSA firms, manufacturing service activities firms. About the adoption is a little bit higher. So we have about 57% of these auto part firms having certain level of adoption of these technologies. It doesn't mean they are fully adopted, but at least they are at least partially adopted. And when we talk about MSA firms, we have about 43% of adoption. So we have 17 auto part firms in this sample and 48. So it gives you an idea, in average, that we have about 46% of firms starting to implement or to adopt this type of technologies. We make a table based on these 19 technologies, and we identify which of these technologies are more adopted. And we identify that the sensing of data collection and real-time processing monitoring, cybersecurity, and cloud computing are among the most adopted technologies. And we also see that technologies that are more intangible, such as blockchain or digital twin or deep learning, are virtual reality, are less adopted by only about 5% or less than 5% of these firms adopt these technologies. When we go to the GEDI survey, and we compare among regions between the northern region and the Vallejo region of Mexico, and we ask them, what was the impact of COVID in your company, in your firm? We find that the effect in the northern region was mostly intermediate. About 57% of firms said we have an intermediate to severe kind of effect, but in the MSA firms, this was 60%. In the Vallejo region, the average was among the intermediate. 80% of the firms responded, we have an intermediate effect of COVID impacting our firm. And the MSA firms have a 31% low and 50% severe. So this is a big indication that either it was really bad or not bad. So it depends on the capability of the firm to face this pandemic, the economic effect of the pandemic. We asked the firms with the GEDI survey, what are the management strategies, the workforce management strategies that your firm adopted in October 2020, which was when the first wave of the pandemic was being felt in Mexico. And many companies says, okay, we went to home office, especially auto parts. We went to home office. 80% said all the jobs that could be sent home, we have home office. 70% of them respond, we also implement paid leave and furlough. 60% says, okay, we start rotating shifts from those workers or those activities that could not be done from home, online. And about 45% reported to have a wage cut. The numbers for MSA, manufacturing support activities firms, were not that high, but were pretty similar, especially in the rotation of shifts or staging of schedules. To mitigate the effects of COVID in the firm, the main strategy followed by firms, both the auto parts and the MSA firms, was cost reduction. They cut all unnecessary costs, and they also increased the organizational capabilities, mostly towards online working or support. The adoption of new technologies was reported by 40% of auto part firms and 37% of MSA companies. This in the literature, in the studies done in other countries on the auto part firms or the auto firms in other countries like India and Turkey and China, was much higher. The literature says that most firms move towards adopting or accelerating the adoption of new technologies, particularly Industry 4.0, to mitigate the immediate effects of COVID-19. But in Mexico, in these two regions, we also find an evidence of this, and this is 40% in the case of the auto parts, and 57% is pretty close to manufacturing support activities. To increase productivity was only reported as a strategy for 20% of auto parts, and to have strategies for marketing strategies, sales strategies, was mostly adopted by manufacturing support activities, was also 20% of the firms reported this. So this gives us an idea that the mitigation strategy for the immediate effects of COVID were mostly based on cost reduction. So to conclude the study, we could say that the main findings is that with the analysis of the data from the Baja Industry 4.0 data, that the level of knowledge of Industry 4.0 technologies among auto part firms in Mexico is limited, and about 20–30% have really started to adapt these technologies in-house. This data, the analysis of this data, also indicates that firms, auto parts and MSA firms, are more familiar with tangible technologies of Industry 4.0, like robots, sensors, monitoring process, and not that familiar with intangible ones, which are the digital twins and blockchain, for example. So the preference in the adoption of these technologies is given to those technologies that are much simpler to operate by users. And this is a little bit contradicting the theory, especially that established by Brinjolsov, that the intangibles complement tangibles in improving productivity. In other words, when we have intangibles like technologies that are more like digital twins and blockchains, they have to be implemented together with other intangibles like training and capacity into these technologies to have the best out of them. And this is not really there. So the survey shows that the local counterpart supporting this process lacks or has a weak human capital to integrate into this technological path. So we could say that automotive firms' efforts need to seek new talents to increase target training internally and improve their workforce competences to raise towards implementation of Industry 4.0. COVID-19 came to disrupt the growth trend that the automobile industry was having in the region. It affected not only regional, but it affected the global demand for automobiles due to the mobile restrictions, and it also affected negatively the profitability, and it brought high unemployment levels. Although COVID-19 is a phenomenon that is independent from the planned rate of adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies, which was already there before the pandemic, the literature, and we could also say in certain point our case study, shows that in the auto industry, this pandemic has pushed forward and accelerated the adoption as a mechanism to overcome the effects of COVID. The data analysis of the GED data has shown that the Mexican firms have focused on workforce management strategies to reduce the cost rather than on engineering solutions, like accelerating this implementation. This is particularly critical in a moment when the world supply chain disturbance has brought firms to reorganize themselves to have a more efficient workforce, to look for lower costs, for new technologies, and even to have discussions about relocations. The disparity between the speed and levels of adoption between different tiers and levels of the automobile pyramid could be understood from the capacity building literature perspective. When we explore, for example, the adoption of the lean production processes in the early 90s, we could see that, as in that case, some of the Industry 4.0 technologies will be adopted as best practices and slowly will be adopted in broader terms. Currently, most firms are experimenting in specific areas with limited resources, and some of these technologies are just very punctual in certain firms. But as they are experimenting more comprehensively and extensively with the support of the headquarters, this adoption will be expanded to more subsidiaries and local suppliers. In the case of Mexico, we also find that despite the lack of public or governmental support and the weak innovation system and the weak institutional environment, the interview says that the OEMs and the first-tier suppliers are adopting these technologies in their subsidiaries, not only in Mexico, but also worldwide. The case study, of course, opens the door for further research. So in the Mexican auto industry case, we identify 3 challenges that will determine the reorganization and integration of Mexico into the worldwide automotive supply chain. First, that the COVID-19 effects have shown the low levels of readiness in firms to react to major global disruptions, and the critical relevance of digital technologies in manufacturing production. Second, we also found that the new set of duty rules that are imposed now by the new United States-Mexico-Canada agreement has added to the factors that the automobile industry in Mexico needs to adjust. Third, the industry worldwide transition towards the electric vehicle, which is a forthcoming reality, has pushed for a simplification and higher level of the supply chain's technological composition. So these 3 aspects are great challenges to the industry and require more detail and careful research and analysis.
Well, thank you so much for your attention, and we are glad to answer any questions or comments that you have. Bertha, Redi, and myself, we are in your hands. Thank you.